to me, I should point out for esteemed audience who's thinking, my God, how am I ever going to get in the right wooden canoe with the most perfect editor ever? That although that, what an extraordinary circumstance, you had experience, you've been published, in McSweeney's, in the New York Post, the New York Times, in the Atlantic, Cosmopolitan. You were a firmly established writer, plus you've been a dating columnist prior to that, right?
Yeah, I mean that's true. That I had already done the work to prove myself, and I had written a lot of different kinds of things. And I think especially because I had written sketches and in the comedy world, that since they wanted a comedy book, and by the way, I still had to write, still had to write sample chapters for them to buy the book. They didn't just, hire me and hope for the best. And I was like, oh, I don't know, should I bother writing this? And I'm so like a sample chapter, because I'd never written, a book chapter before, but I'm so glad I did it. And I approached it the way that I would a sketch or a story, which is it's really focused on the characters and the dialogue. And then I had to kind of learn to vary the rhythm and the pace and have slow down moments that weren't just action packed. Like a sketch has to be really quick and really condensed, and you have no time to waste. Whereas a book, you have this wonderful opportunity to reflect, to show off the inner life, to show the quiet moments and the fast, exciting moments.
So, okay, so the canoe happens, you and Carl Jones talk over your shared memories of horses. And so how far do you get on that initial meeting? Are you plotting the book at that point? Or is it just horse girl go and then you have to plot it out after the fact?
Yeah, I had to plot it out after the fact. And to be honest, at first I just thought, well, this was a fun canoe ride. Nothing's ever gonna, I'll probably never hear from that guy again, And he did follow up, but it was kind of like we didn't really get to the actual writing part for months later. And then I had to come up with the whole thing myself, which I really had to reflect back on those times with my sister writing, and I read a lot of horse books. I did a ton of research. I talked to trainers. I talked to veterinarians, and I really had to figure out what would the story be. And I wanted to approach it, since I wasn't obviously I'm not a professional writer and I'm not completely immersed in the grown-up horse world. So I wanted to tell a story that would stand up outside of the horse element. I just read this wonderful thread from a screenwriter, Brian Edward Hill, and he talks about genre writing. And he said, to be successful in genre writing, you have to approach it like it's just a good dramatic movie or story or TV show or whatever. And then that dramatic story encounters the genre elements in Act 1 that add to it and make it fun and rich in detail. But it needs to stand up on its own without the genre elements. And I think I was like, oh my God, that's so, I wish I had known that at the beginning. I think I got to that place, right? I definitely got to that place, but it's such an important lesson. And so for me, I really loved writing the sister relationship. Willa's mom is stationed overseas as an Air Force pilot, and Willa's really missing her mom, and those human emotional elements, and also the comic relief elements. Those are things of being a tween and making mistakes and being awkward. I wanted to make sure we had all of those elements so it would hold up for people, for anybody, not just horse lovers. And one thing I did in the book, which we decided was Carl's idea, we might need to explain some of the equestrian terms to people who aren't really familiar. So I think I came up with the name hoof notes instead of footnotes. So every chapter has these cute little hoof notes that explain, some of the horse terms, and with, in a cheeky way. And I think those have been kind of popular with the early readers, so that made me happy. But yeah, I wanted it to be a complete story on its own with some really fun horse elements.
I really love those, well, lots of things, but I really love those hoof notes because one is just it's consistently a way for you to fit in some extra jokes that without impacting the direct drama because it's not part of the story. The other thing I thought as I was reading it is, oh, think of all the young readers who haven't encountered footnotes before, and look at you preparing them to go on towards scholarly excellence.
I didn't even think of that. Wow, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. Well, there we go.
It's going to be a solid uptick in academic writing across this great nation of ours once Horse Girl is available and widely read.
I'm just doing my part for academia. I'm glad that their first experience with footnotes will be, you know, a fun one instead of a terrifying one, which is how I recall it.
So, how long does it take you to write Horse Girl then?
Okay, this is an interesting story because I would say I spent, gosh, let me go through the timeline. I was started writing it and I wrote about half of it for over a course of maybe like 4 months or so. And I was doing my full-time journalism writing at the same time. So I'd write on nights and weekends. And then I had the opportunity, I was invited to become a writer for Audible. They were putting together a kids' writer's room. And actually the editor there had gotten a sample chapter of Horse Girl, and that's how she kind of discovered me. And that writer's room, the idea, so Audible has, you know, creates these Audible originals, which are just made to be listened to. They're not book form. And we were putting together with 4 writers that perhaps we work collaboratively on 4 projects, or perhaps we'd each work on our own. And it ended up that we decided we'd each work on our own because it just logistically was too difficult. We couldn't all be in the same place every day. So my project that I pitched is called the Flying Flamingo Sisters. And it's sort of done as an old-timey radio play set in the 1930s. And I'll tell you all about that. But the deal with Audible was that they needed it done quickly. And so I was able to sort of I still had time to finish Horse Girl based on that contract. So I paused in the middle. I wrote the Flying Flamingo Sisters in about 4 or 5 months. And then I had to go back and finish Horse Girl, which I guess I did them both in roughly like just over a year, which anyway, I just don't recommend, like never. It was really, really hard for me to stop in the middle and then go back and finish. Like that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I didn't have the strongest outline for Horse Girl, which is a lesson I learned. In Flying Flamingo Sisters, I had the most detailed outline anyone's ever written. Like it was just so specific. And that's what I realized. Now, from now on, I will just I'm going to be a super detailed outliner because I was facing the second half of the book and I was like, I don't know what's supposed to happen. Somebody help me. Like, I don't know. But I figured it out, you know, I stuck with it. I had a deadline. I respect deadlines. And I have had a great little circle of writer friends and family who didn't let me give up. And that was so crucial. I think it's so crucial as an author, especially a new author, to have a very small supportive team that will keep you going on those days you do not want to keep going, you know.
So these people providing feedback as you go, or just encouraging messages, just somebody you can reach out to and say, hey, tell me I'm good and I can write?
It's a mix of both. So my parents are both retired teachers. So they have read everything I've ever written and like proofread it. And they're my first and most supportive audience. So if I have a new chapter, when it's ready, when I think it's ready, I'll send it to them. But then I have another great friend and frequent collaborator named Brian Clark. We met at the Groundlings, and he writes for a lot of preschool TV shows. And he, you know, he's my, he helps, we help each other. We edit each other's work. We give each other notes. We talk through the story together. And, you know, and then I'm lucky to have my sister and other friends who can just provide support and also story ideas. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to have such a good team that can actually do hands-on help with the writing and also the emotional side, which is very important too.